Can you make money handicapping the American election? In this segment of The Investment Advisor, we look a little at politics, but we look at politics to see how it can affect your investment portfolio. In particular, we often look at how the Trump presidency affects global markets and how it might affect the stocks and bonds that you hold in your portfolio. I thought what we do is give a quick overview of the candidates, not just Donald Trump, but some of the Democratic candidates as well, and see who it is who might emerge from this large pack. Presidential elections are hard to forecast. Nobody knows. If you look at elections past, if you looked a year from the time the voting took place, you'd see candidates who never made it out of the first or second primaries, which happened in Iowa and New Hampshire in February of 2020. At the same time, there are polls, and polls do give you an indication of which Democratic candidates might contend for the nomination, and then who might challenge Donald Trump. Why does that matter? It affects how the stock market will perform, how the bond markets will perform, how your investments will do in a global sense. What we know about the election today is that while Donald Trump more or less likely to have the Republican nomination, despite some of the impeachment concerns that are going on in Washington, D.C. and around the United States, there are 3 or 4 major Democratic contenders for this nomination. Who are they? One is Bernie Sanders, who ran against Hillary Clinton in 2016. The other is Senator Elizabeth Warren, who is a Democratic senator from the state of Massachusetts. Another is former Vice President Joe Biden, who lives in Delaware but has really been a Washington figure for a long time. And those are the 3 major contenders who have about 22% of the polls. What we do know at this point, and it's almost a year before the election, is that the Democratic Party more or less is leaning to the left. Both Sanders and Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, favor a wealth tax. Maybe it's over $40 million, maybe it's over $50 million. At the same time, it introduces the specter, for some, of a wealth tax, which has never been present in the United States. So the idea that the United States could be governed by somebody on the left side of the Democratic Party, well, that doesn't ensure that they get their election platform passed through Congress. It does give you an indication of where some of the sentiments lie. Who are the centrist candidates? The centrist candidates on the Democratic side would be Senator Cory Booker, who's from New Jersey, Pete Buttigieg, who's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Amy Klobuchar is a senator from Minnesota. These are second-tier candidates, and while it's possible and probably likely that 1-2 of them could emerge to challenge, say, Elizabeth Warren in some of the primaries later on, as could independent New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, the chances are more than likely, if you're betting, and this is what we're talking about, you're betting with your portfolio and your investments, that a left-leaning nominee will come out of the Democratic primary system. What does that mean if Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders is the likely nominee of the Democratic Party in 2020? It means markets will stutter. They won't like it particularly. I don't say they'll like everything that Donald Trump is doing, and there's a myth that Republicans are good for markets and Democrats are not. At the same time, there's concerns in the body politic of the United States, especially among a number of these candidates for the Democratic Party, that there's an unequal distribution of wealth in the United States, and they want to correct it through higher taxes. The best way for you to follow the election, I can see if you don't live in the United States, it must seem a little foreign in every sense of the word. In the month of February, the vote first in Iowa, which is a caucus, is not truly a vote at a ballot box. Then there's a primary in New Hampshire about the 10th or the 11th of February, and then another in South Carolina. Those 3 will probably whittle the Democratic field from, say, 18 candidates, which exist today, probably down to 6 or 7. And who do I think the top 5 of that group will be? I'll go out on a limb here and say Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Michael Bloomberg, Pete Buttigieg, And as a flyer, I'll say Cory Booker. Those will be the 6 that I predict will get through to the final rounds. Who do I think gets the nomination? On the Investment Advisor, we don't have a crystal ball to gaze into the future. I do think that Vice President Biden will not do well in some of these primaries. I think age and familiarity will count against him. I think Senator Bernie Sanders, he's from Vermont, he's more independent, he often has the label socialist, will probably not do as well as Elizabeth Warren over the long term. But I would expect Warren or Sanders in the medium term to do well, which perhaps will have a negative impact on global markets and on the American stock market. And maybe I don't know what I'm talking about either. That's all the time we have today on The Investment Advisor. I'm your host, Matthew Stevenson, in partnership with Dukascopy TV. Remember, money can take care of you. It cannot take care of itself.